All right, I'll let you guys get to your webinar. Thank you so much for having me. Again, name's Pat Donnelly. Website's patdonnelly.com, Donley, and I'm on Facebook too, sometimes doing events, things like that.
Well, we want to welcome everyone to today's webinar, and as has been the case since the COVID outbreak began, this is an extremely difficult time, a very difficult time for the creative sector in Illinois and across the nation. And many members of our sector are looking at unemployment benefits as a crucial support that's needed during this unprecedented time, at least unprecedented recently. And so we want to welcome you to today's webinar. We hope that it is helpful. I think out of all the questions that we've received, either through Facebook or through past webinars, apart from maybe the PPP loans, the unemployment issue has been the biggest one. We've received so many questions from the last webinar that we have decided to focus this webinar on unemployment benefits too. And so two things first before we get into some of the content. I did want to emphasize that Arts Alliance Illinois has set up a Facebook group, and it's an opportunity for people in our sector to talk with each other and share experiences, and for you to get updates on what's happening in the COVID crisis affecting our sector throughout the week. So Demi will share a link to that. Secondly, as many of you know, Arts Alliance is managing the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund. We're one of many partners that are seeking to keep that fund going and keep it strong, and we are confident that it will be strong. And so we are opening applications for funding, opening it up again for those receiving those applications on Monday, May 4th. We had temporarily suspended them as we had such a large number of requests and applications. So we have a big fundraising push that's happening right now, starting today, to raise an additional $65,000 in grassroots donations that will go into the fund. And so what we're doing is you can change your social media profile picture and your header image on social media to just be gray. And it's emphasizing what a world would be like without the arts. And so we're asking everyone to change their profile picture. You may have seen some of that going on from your friends on social media. And Demi is going to drop, if he hasn't already, a toolkit in the chat, a link to a toolkit where you can find the images to use. You can also go to Arts Alliance Illinois social media and snag the gray images from there. If you have already applied as an artist or nonprofit arts organization to the Arts for Illinois Relief Fund, you do not need to reapply. So we have your application. If you haven't applied yet, applications will be open until May 11th. So please help us spread the word about this important resource. Today, we're going to focus, as I mentioned, on unemployment, and I'm going to try to be brief in giving you a political update on the latest that has happened with respect to COVID relief legislation and programs. So Demi, I'm going to quickly see if I can share my screen here, and we'll see if we can make this happen. Here we go. All right. Can you see it? All right. So I want to emphasize actually three things that have happened recently and impact the benefits that's available to our sector. The first is the day after we had our last webinar, Congress enacted, but the president signed what's called the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancement Act, signed on April 24. That provides $370 billion more to the Small Business Association for the PPP loan program to small businesses and to what they call the economic injury loan program that also goes to small businesses. As you may have recalled, billions of dollars were provided for those two new programs when the initial act called CARES was passed, that money was gone. It was all accounted for in 13 days. So this PPP and Healthcare Enhancement Act was a way to replenish that account to deal with the demand. Here's a little quick, and we can make this available, but the $370 billion that was made available to small business loan programs, of that amount, the vast majority, 310 billion, went to the PPP program. And largely it was just putting money into the same PPP system, and that system has been plagued with difficulties, as you know. However, they did, and this is a positive step, they did reserve $60 billion for smaller institutions, smaller banking institutions. And of that, 30 billion is reserved, as we talked about last time, which was in the Senate bill, 30 billion is reserved for the smaller banking institutions. And those institutions include community financial institutions. And those are the ones that tend to be smaller, closer to the community. They include minority depository institutions, certified development companies, and we can provide more details if you're interested on what those are. Later on, I will drop a link into the chat function that enables you to search for the community financial institution nearest to you. One other good sign that the Treasury Department is listening to some feedback is yesterday starting at 4 p.m., Wednesday starting at 4 p.m. and going to midnight, the Department of Treasury, SBA, reserved that 8-hour block of time for banks that have less than $1 billion in assets, and those are considered the smaller banks. So it actually reserved a 8-hour block of time where the big banks did not have access to the system to submit their applications. And all signs are that that did permit some of the smaller guys to get their applications through. And that's something I think that we believe is very important, and we hope that additional times like that are reserved for the smaller banking institutions. We certainly need those additional blocked off times. And one of the reasons for that is just a huge equity issue, that many of the dollars seem to go to larger organizations. You probably heard about the Potbelly example and other examples. And so it's important that the money goes towards smaller businesses, particularly businesses that are impacted, businesses and communities that are disproportionately impacted by the COVID crisis. Many of those communities are Alana communities, are communities with Black-owned businesses, and we know that those are being hit extremely hard by the COVID crisis. In fact, one of the human resources company, Paycheck, just issued a report that identified the among Black-owned businesses, the 5 industries that are getting hit the hardest. And right near the top was the arts, entertainment, and recreation, out of Black-owned businesses that are getting hit the hardest. So we will continue to advocate as an alliance that the money goes to who it's intended to go for, and that is small businesses, and especially small businesses in communities that have been traditionally overlooked by the banking system. The second, we're going to move more towards the unemployment issue. However, this is on the employer side. Employers, including nonprofit organizations, contribute into the unemployment system of the state. And that then enables the state's trust fund to pay out unemployment benefits. Some nonprofits decide, rather than make regular payments into the system, they will do what they call a self-insured route or a reimbursement route. What they'll do in that case is they will pay back the state unemployment trust fund for the benefits that are actually paid out to former employees. And one of the things that never could have been really considered by any of them choosing that self-insured route is that we'd hit this pandemic. And so they are being hit with a lot of unexpected costs of benefits being paid to former employees. The CARES Act and the federal government responded to that by providing enough funding and making a commitment to cover 50% of those self-insured cost, to provide some relief to nonprofits being saddled by this unexpected cost. What concerns us greatly, however, is earlier in the week, the Department of Labor issued instructions that said states should bill nonprofits immediately for 100% of the costs of employees' benefits. So those self-insured nonprofits would get a bill basically for 100% of the value of the benefits that's being provided. That's just unacceptable. In fact, the National Council of Nonprofits called it breathtakingly cruel. What would have to happen is the nonprofits would have to pay, would be billed, would have to pay 100%, and then the state with federal dollars would turn around and reimburse them, give them back 50%. So that double reimbursement process makes no sense whatsoever. And we and our nonprofit partners from Forefront all the way up to the independent sector will continue to argue that Congress and Trump immediately act to reverse that and make a more sensible approach. And then finally, there is general agreement that the massive amount of relief that has been provided so far through Congress is not enough to deal with the even more massive need. And so there's been a lot of talk about what they call CARES 2.0. CARES Act was the first, one of the biggest, the $2 trillion relief package. What we're seeing is we have competing priorities in DC, and we will be tracking and watching those closely. The Democrats in the Senate have been calling for more money for state and local government to deal with COVID. And the Republicans, in contrast, have been calling for liability changes with respect to employers, to hold employers harmless from certain liability situations. Each side is demanding that that be included in a CARES 2.0, and there are deficit concerns among some people in Congress as well. So we'll continue to advocate for more support and watch that process very closely. Those are the three top updates. New money for PPP, the DOL ruling, and CARES 2.0. But now let's get to the heart of the matter for today. And I'm gonna hand it over to you, Chris, to introduce our representative from the Illinois Department of Employment Security, Eric, and to answer and ask and get as many answers as we can to questions that people have about unemployment. So this is Chris Audane with the Alphawood Foundation and himself, a wonderful practicing artist, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thanks to Arts Alliance for all that they're doing, advocacy and information sharing, which I find really helpful. I'm here to help moderate and get some questions answered by our guest today, who is Eric Conjus. Eric Conjus manages the adjudication program for the Unemployment Insurance Support Division of Illinois Department of Employment Security. He's been with the agency for 15 years and is here to answer your questions to the best of his ability. Hey, Eric, how are you?
I'm great, Chris. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for coming on today. There's a lot of good questions, and I'm sure you can help provide some clarity. From the top, we got a question. This is from Nancy. Given the current difficulties reaching IDES by phone, what are some other ways people can reset their account passwords when they do not remember the answer to the security questions?
So if you can't reach by phone and are having difficulty, unfortunately right now, the only possibility for resetting your internet password, if you can't do it yourself online, is to talk to a representative. We've added staff as well as extended hours in our call centers to try to deal with the incredible demand we have right now. We ask that the public is patient with us, but unfortunately right now, that's the only way that if you can't follow the prompts online, a person would have to.
Right, so there's other instances where you would encourage people not to call, but for this situation, you'd say that you have to call to reset your password.
Correct. This isn't just a educate yourself issue. This is someone actually has to intervene to correct that particular problem.
Thank you. Next up, if someone has applied for regular unemployment benefits when should they expect to hear back from IDES?
So the first step in the normal application process is that you would, once the claim is accepted, we'll mail out a letter to you called the UI finding. That typically comes within, usually in normal circumstances under 7 days, but with the increased load in US mail and our own load, it could take a little bit longer, so about 7 to 10 days. Generally, you won't actually get a call from our agency unless there's a problem processing your claim, in which case an individual may reach out to you. But the first step is going to be look out for that letter. And that letter is going to tell you a couple of things. It's going to let you know how much you're eligible for, if anything. And it will also tell you if you're not eligible, the dollar amount will be zero. As well as give you the date of the first time that you must call to certify for benefits. So that's basically claiming weeks. And that's generally about 2 weeks after the start of your claim, and then every 2 weeks after that.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Per IDES instructions, many independent contractors have applied for regular unemployment so that the denial can document potential eligibility for the upcoming PUA. If a contractor has received the denial for regular unemployment, what is their next step? Will IDES contact them to start the PUA process, or should the contractor take the next step of applying for PUA on May 11th?
Great question, actually. So we're still working out the communication part of how to notify and when to notify individuals to file for PUA. And we're expecting that the PUA program will be going live the week of May 11th. That's the target date right now. So if you've already applied for regular UI and have been notified that you're ineligible for benefits, there would be no other step right now if you know in fact that you are an independent contractor and would otherwise not be eligible for regular UI. The only step that I would advise an individual to take is if you actually believe that you may be eligible for a regular UI claim, then the UI finding that you receive is considered a determination and can be appealed. So if you're going to appeal, if you insist that you should be getting, no, I was an employee of this organization and not an independent contractor, then you should appeal, and you should include with that appeal any wage records that you might have from your employer.
Thank you. And just for clarity, can you tell us what the acronyms are, UI and PUA, just so everyone knows for sure?
Sure. And actually, if you don't mind, I started with the assumption that everyone is on the same page. So I can go through kind of an overview of the entire, what am I talking about when I talk about regular unemployment versus PUA and all of that.
I think that'd be a good idea. Jonathan, is that right?
That sounds great. I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally speaking, so UI stands for unemployment insurance. And unemployment insurance is for individuals that are unemployed. Regular unemployment insurance, is for individuals that are unemployed through no fault of their own, provided they meet the minimum earnings requirement over the previous about 12 to 18 months before they file a claim. And I won't get into the weeds there. If they do qualify, the individual must remain able and available for work, and in most cases, actively look for work. If these and other requirements are met, the person would be eligible for a maximum of 26 weeks of benefits under regular unemployment, or UI. So we know that Congress passed the CARES Act, which provides an extension to the regular 26 weeks called Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, and we refer to that often as PEUC. Which adds an additional 13 weeks. So if you do not qualify for regular UI benefits, you would not get the PEUC. So for those not eligible for regular UI and PEUC, the CARES Act created the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or PUA. in order to receive PUA, you must certify that you are impacted either directly or indirectly by COVID-19 to receive those benefits. You must be able to work unless your inability to work is a COVID-related reason, such as state mandated or health agency mandated quarantine or personal diagnosis. So that program, PUA, provides up to 39 weeks of benefits. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful. I hope that helps folks with some clarity. So I'll go ahead and move on to some more questions we have. Are individuals who have reduced work eligible for unemployment, or are unemployment benefits only for those who have lost all of their work? Here's a specific situation. If I still work part-time, now capped by the employer at less than 10 hours a week as a W-2 employee, but have lost most of my hours there and most of my 1099 work, but I'm still technically employed, should I still apply? I'm sorry, my dog is barking. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay, I have to distract him with a treat, and he stops. So I was at still technically employed. Should I still apply for unemployment now, or should I wait until I lose all my income to do so?
Absolutely do not wait. So you may be eligible for unemployment if you're working part-time. You should, if your hours are reduced to an amount that is less than what you would receive from us for unemployment benefits, then you can get a partial unemployment benefit. So any amount that you earn that is less than half of your weekly benefit amount, the amount we determine that you're eligible for each week, then there would be no reduction to your benefit amount from us. If you're earning greater than 50% of your weekly benefit amount, up to $1 less of your weekly benefit amount, then we do a deduction. So let's just say your benefit amount is $100 and you're earning $51 a week. We would deduct $1 from your $100 benefit amount, and you would get a $99 payment from us.
Okay.
For that week.
Got it. So you're saying people in that situation should still apply?
Yeah, definitely. We want to support people who, have not received, who are not receiving their normal wages while they either look for work or, bide the time until normal situations occur. So that provision is there to help support partially unemployed individuals.
Great. And then this is nuanced to get a little more clarity. Many freelance workers also have part-time W-2 employment. Is the PUA system that will start on May 11th designed for those mixed situations, or just individuals who only do contract or freelance work?
Can you start over? I missed the beginning of the question.
Yeah, so it's a little nuanced. So freelance workers also have traditional W-2 employment, so they have some of both, so they're mixed. And this is asking, in those mixed situations, should individuals also apply when they have freelance work and W-2 employment?
If an individual has W-2 employment, they should apply for regular UI. So we are required by the Department of Labor, before we allow a claim for pandemic unemployment assistance or PUA, we must check to ensure that the individual is not first eligible for regular unemployment. So even if you make the mistake and file for one or the other, we're working to make sure that we put you on the right program.
Got it. Very helpful. This is another question. My application went through as self-employed, but it stated that I was entitled to $0. What does that mean? Is that the formal rejection notice?
So that would be the UI finding, the unemployment insurance finding that I mentioned earlier, letting you know that based off what you've input, you're not currently eligible for regular unemployment. If you if you are in fact a self-employed individual, you work at, if it were my business, Eric Company, whatever. And I know that I'm a self-employed individual. There's nothing further that you need to do pending PUA implementation. If you know that you worked for a company who just, had you file or had you on a 1099 just because they wanted to circumvent taxes or something, any number of situations, then you might consider filing an appeal. And by the way, appeals can be submitted just in writing, type up a letter, write out a letter, and any supporting documentation, and submit it to the fax number that's on the top of any letter that you received from us.
Got it. A couple more here. Someone applied for unemployment to get denied. When answering if they were unemployed, it brought them to a page where it asked them to fill in their employers, but they are self-employed, so don't have employers. Is there guidance on how to answer that question? They want to make sure IDES doesn't think that the contracts are employers. It gets specific with the nuance. Do you need me to clarify that question further?
Well, I mean, I can answer it on its face. I'm not quite sure on the thinking it's contract or not, so maybe that part could be clarified. But if you're self-employed, when you get to that screen that asks for your employment history, you would just need to put the name of your business, or if you don't even have a business and it's just you're kind of just doing things on your own there, then your contact information there, and we'll sort it out on the back end.
Got it. IDES asked if you've worked since April 19th. This person did for 2 days, but when the salary is asked, there's a disconnect between salary and earned pre-tax income. Which do they declare?
Yeah, I'm gonna need clarification on that one.
So let's see. IDES asks in the application, I assume, if someone has worked since April 19th. This person worked for 2 days. There's a question about salary. I think they're asking if maybe the salary, if they're supposed to put the salary or pre-tax income. They're asking which do I declare.
Yes. Yeah. Whenever you're reporting any earnings to us, it's always earnings prior to any deductions.
Got it. All right, and I think we've got, these were questions from the previous calls. Let's see if we have any. Jonathan, do you have any that have popped up?
No, I think one of the questions that we've, and I'm looking at the questions here, and the one that's popped up with the highest number of thumbs up, and if you hit thumbs up on a question, it brings it up. And so I'm just going to throw this one to you, Eric. We've covered it a little bit in terms of, I think what we're seeing is the reality is a lot of people have a mix of W-2 work and of contract work. So it's not always clear what to go for. And we've touched a little bit on it, but here's a question from Jessica. Many of us likely have income comprised of both 1099s and W-2s. Does this affect the process at all? I started the IDES application process, and because of the 2 W-2s I have from last year, I qualify for a very small amount from IDES. Does this disqualify me from the PUA when that system becomes available?
Yes, it does. If you qualify for any dollar amount in regular UI, that must be paid first. And then any 1099 employment, if it's truly independent contractor work, would just be excluded from the calculation of your benefit amount. The individual does not have the choice between regular unemployment and PUA. I neglected to mention the additional, what's called the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is available right now from March, for weeks paid from March 29th through the last payable week in July, which is an additional $600 per week for which regardless of which program you're on. So if you're getting that, if you're told you're eligible for the minimum $51, let's just say that's the number, you would in fact get the additional $600. So your actual paid benefit before any reductions in taxes would be $651.
Okay, and just as a reminder to people, part of the CARES Act was a federally funded additional $600 on top of what you would be eligible from the state. So I'm hearing, Eric, is that $600 is on top of both the PUA and the regular?
That's correct.
And that goes until when? How long does that $600 a week last?
So that's currently authorized through, for Illinois, for everyone through July 31st, but effectively ends in Illinois the last payable week in July, which I believe is July 25th.
Okay, and then when you apply, say you apply on May 11 for PUA, do your benefits then, just to be doubly sure, do your benefits start when you apply, or are they actually backdated to when you lost employment?
So that program is, it's written into the law that it can be backdated to, I want to say, the February 2nd in Illinois. So not for any weeks, of course, that you may have worked, but just say if that doesn't come available until May 11th, but your last day of work was April 1st, you had no other income since then you will have the ability to backdate to the appropriate period.
Okay, and then just to wrap up, and I'll hand it back to you, Chris. But so in the case of Jessica, we're getting a smaller amount through regular unemployment. What would you? Is there anything she can do if there's a sense that she might get more through PUA, or what would you recommend that she do when in that situation?
The individual has no choice as to which program that
Okay.
they're. If you're eligible for 50, let's just say $70 under regular UI, but under well, no, actually, if you're eligible for regular UI, you would never go to the PUA track.
Okay.
So it's one or the other, the regular UI to the PEUC, or PUA.
Okay, and so when the new system opens, if someone has both W-2 and contract work, should they apply through the new system, through the PUA system, or through the traditional system?
Through the traditional system, but we're making efforts to identify those people. We're checking when you apply for PUA, if you're eligible for regular UI, you're going to be denied PUA and advised to file for regular unemployment benefits.
Okay, got it. I'm going to hand it back to you, Chris.
Okay, Jonathan, maybe we can go back and forth with questions.
Let's do it.
All right.
We'll tag team.
Yeah, so the next one on here.
Go easy on me, guys.
Yeah, we're trying.
Chris is going to ask the tough questions.
Someone's asking about the independent contractor questionnaire. Can you please address it? That's the one that's on the IDES website. Is this to be filled out and mailed for, sorry, the thing just moved. Is this to be filled out and mailed for everyone, or do we wait until we are specifically asked to fill this out?
Please wait until you're specifically asked to fill that out. I'm writing a note to find out where that is and, shoot it with a bazooka. We don't want everyone just randomly sending those in. That is a part of our normal investigation process, and it allows us to get information when there's a question. But if there's no question that you're an independent contractor, there's no need to fill that form out and no need to send it in to us.
I think a lot of us feel like we could use bazookas right now. Here's a good question, and it's a detailed question, but I'm going to ask it because it's coming from an actor's vantage point. Here's the question. How are actors meant to report earnings from residuals during bi-weekly certification? So So for example, I recently received a holding fee check for a commercial that I worked on over a year ago. In the certification process, there's no way that I know of to report earnings that are not connected to a day worked that particular week. So this person ended up saying that they had actually worked that week, even though they hadn't. So we have a lot of, actors in our communities and others who might have that situation. What would you recommend they do?
So I have a cheat sheet here. And let's put a pin in that one while I search this sheet. So I don't want to be given, that's not one that comes up often. So I just want to verify that response before I give that.
And there may be a way too, Eric, that if we don't get to the answer, that we can follow up with you, if that's okay.
Oh, that would be perfect. And then I can give a written response to this once I have a chance to, look some of that stuff up.
Okay. And so if you're on the line, I know we have lots of questions. We'll seek to, if we don't get to yours exactly today, we'll seek to follow up with you, Eric, if that's okay, and try to get some more information and then get that out there. So
sure. Actually, my little cheat sheet, I'm so glad I had this saved on my computer. I'm ready. So residual payments are attributable only to the weeks in which the personal services were actually performed, and therefore are only deductible from those weeks. So if that's for a service that was performed, say, several years ago, then that's not disqualifying income.
Okay, so do they have to report it then?
No.
No, they don't. Okay. So there's another one from an actor. Actors are assertive. Their questions have been bumped up a little bit. This is the second one up there. So it says, when I get to the IDS EES site, I have to confirm my start and end date. However, I get paid through a payroll company for my working days on multiple jobs through different employers, as well as from kind of residual income from past jobs. So what should they enter in that case from residual income, if anything? In the case like this, they might get paid a small amount during the crisis from previous year's work. It sounds like, is that the similar situation then, where they would not report it?
So I'm not sure if the person who asked that question is on the call right now and maybe can, verify that I'm getting this correct in chat or something. But so the first question was regarding when you claim current weeks, when you're certifying for benefits, you're certifying today for the last 2 weeks to get paid right now. And you just got a check last week for previous services for a commercial you did last year. Do you need to report that? That answer is no.
No, okay.
This question sounds to be more about when you're filing for unemployment, and this company, and I think Employco is one, that processes those sorts of things. So they're showing up as you worked for them last year, but it was actually a residual payment.
Yeah.
It was paid during your benefit year, so you don't want to say you did not work for that company. I think you just want to put the dates that you actually performed services for that payment. If you say you don't know them or did not work for them during that period, then it's going to delete from your work history, and it has the potential for reducing the amount of benefits that you receive from us. Okay. So I would just go ahead and put the dates that you actually performed services for that employer. And then if we have questions, we can give you a call.
Okay. Tag, you're it, Chris.
All right. This is someone who had a show that got canceled before rehearsal started. For unemployment, they therefore have no income. How do they convince IDS that they were fired because of COVID-19?
So the show was canceled before they started. So
they signed a contract which indicated they were going to have some pay. The show was canceled. They didn't get any payment.
Right, but they were laid off prior to that. Let's assume, right? And these individuals normally would be eligible for regular unemployment. This is an employer relationship, so they would just file for unemployment the normal way. They were laid off from the last. It was a lack of work from the last program or performance. and the new one just didn't start. So there was never an employee-employer relationship in that situation, and they should be able to file, provided they meet the eligibility requirements I mentioned before. They should be able to file for regular unemployment benefits.
And so I think we have questions coming in from people who are in the process of applying for benefits. And then we have a lot of questions also coming in from people who, it looks like, who are receiving benefits, right? And so in that case, I think maybe you want to just quickly explain, Eric, you have to certify. What does that word mean exactly?
So certifying for benefits is how you get paid. If you don't certify, you don't get paid. The original UI finding that we mail to you is the only time that we advise you of when your certification date will be. We tell you when your first one will be. So let me just pull up my calendar, and if anyone has the ability to pull up a calendar with me, and I'll just try to walk through this quickly. So if you filed a claim, just say April 12th.
Okay.
Your claim is effective that week, right? Mm-hmm. We'll send you a UI finding that tells you your benefit amount is $400 a week. You're eligible for this maximum amount. And hey, your first certification date is going to be April 27th. When you certify on April 27th, that's either by calling the automated telephone system or re-logging into your account to certify. And there's an option there, certify for benefits. And you need to do that for the first time on April 27th for the previous 2 weeks. And you basically are answering eligibility questions. Were you able to work for the last 2 weeks? Did you work or earn anything? Did you refuse any offers of work? Were you fired? XYZ. As long as your responses are the appropriate responses, no, yes, I was able to work, no, I didn't quit or anything like that, then once you certify on the 27th, that's going to trigger your payment, provided there are no other eligibility issues pending.
And if you get given $0 or denied one, do you still need to certify for that?
You would only need to certify if you're pending an appeal of that $0 decision.
Okay, but if you're pending the appeal, then you would certify.
Correct, because you don't want to run into a situation where now, 3 weeks later or a month later, our system will only allow you to make up certifications for up to 14 days from the date that you missed. Okay. So once you pass that date, now we have to schedule you for an interview and, go through all these steps to figure out why you missed your certification. So if you believe that you're eligible, and that's for any situation, not just the $0. If you're denied benefits for misconduct or refusal of work or any of these things, and you file an appeal and believe you may be eligible in the future, you need to continue certifying every 2 weeks. So in my example before, the first certification is April 27th. We won't notify you again that your next certification is going to be May 11th. That's your next certification, and every 2 weeks until you exhaust benefits.
So I think, for many in our sector, this is the first time that we're encountering using this system. So it's trying to figure out an understandably complex system. But the $600, and I think Yana asked this question, and Amy, you answered that the $600 that's provided by the CARES Act, which is for a limited time and which is per week, that is automatic, right, Eric? That's not something you have to apply separately for.
That's correct.
Okay, so that will be given automatically. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Yeah, so there still might be a little confusion on how exactly to apply for PUA. And you may have said this already, but someone's asked and it's gotten a few likes. So how does someone apply for PUA?
Well, we're in the process of developing that system right now. And that's going to be, we seem to be making a lot of progress and getting that up and running. The target date that's been announced from the governor's office is the week of May 11th. And right now, I don't know that we have any problems meeting that date. And so the specifics on how and where it's going to be online, but how and where, a specific URL is not available right now. And once that's available, we'll be posting that to our website. And I tell you what, for you guys, Jonathan, I'll send you guys a link once I have more information on when that's available, and so you guys can let your.
Yeah, no, thank you, Eric, and we'll get it to everyone. I mean, I think the biggest question, and it's been brought up to thumbs up higher up in the question, it is really for people who have applied for regular UI. I think one of the biggest questions is what happens next if they've been denied. Will the IDES contact them? Or is it a matter of them having to then take the initiative once they hear about it and apply again?
So that's kind of a tough one, Jonathan, because there are so many different, this sounds like it's a circus or something, but there are different reasons why an individual might be denied. So if you disagree with for whatever reason that you've been denied benefits, the next step is for the individual to file an appeal. The determination, even that original finding letter, is final after 30 days. So if you don't appeal within 30 days, it becomes final and you don't have any jurisdiction to appeal. So again, I don't want to invite frivolous appeals either. If you're just, I won't say frivolous, but if in fact that you own your own business, you're a sole proprietor, and you should not be getting regular UI, then there's no need to file an appeal. PUA is for you. It will be coming in a couple weeks. Let's wait for that. We have a whole lot of work right now. We don't need to drive, unnecessary items. But if you truly believe that you should be eligible for a regular UI, that's going to be your first step, is to, number one, continue to certify every 2 weeks and file an appeal within 30 days of the decision.
I had another one. It was, I can't see if I can't find it right now, but I remember it. It was about what actors need to do if they need to look for employment outside of their field while they're getting unemployment benefits.
So the Department of Labor has allowed what's called, so the Department of Labor does not allow us to completely remove restrictions on, or the requirement that individuals must be able to work, available for work, and actively looking for work. Okay, they have provided guidance that that allows states some latitude in interpreting those provisions insofar that an individual is actively looking for work in light of, number one, the labor market of their customary occupation, right? So, and a labor market that an individual reasonably can do within the restrictions of, let's just assume we're talking within the restrictions of COVID-19. So if I'm quarantined, or, my job is a non-essential bar or theater or whatever the case may be, and I'm at home, actively seeking can be anything that you can reasonably perform from home. So that can be transcribing work. There are other a few other examples that are out there, the different things that you can find that you can do from home would satisfy the actively seeking requirement. And remember, this is a self-certification.
We have some cases where we have teaching artists that work independently, and they may tutor or offer classes. One question that comes in, do I need to wait for groups to officially cancel events before applying for unemployment? That's one. The second is, how about lost money? Maybe we can take the second one first. How about lost money or lost income due to private music tutoring that's been canceled? I'm with a W-2 group and 1099 groups. The W-2 group already canceled June 2020 events, but is planning a summer 2020 event. And the 1099 groups have events tentative for June and summer, which both look improbable. So I think one of the questions is, does the event need to be officially canceled in order to kind of count that?
So we define an unemployed individual on a weekly basis. So
Okay.
if you're not working or don't expect to work this week, you should file your claim this week. And that's not contingent on any future planning of any events or whatever. On a week by week basis, I could have a return to work date for next week, but am unemployed this week. In that case, you would need to file for this week, and future work will deal with that. You'll report those earnings if you return to work at some point. But again, claims for unemployment benefits start the week in which, for regular unemployment, start the week in which you file the claim. So I would suggest go ahead and file that claim, that regular UI claim, and get it started. Again, provided that you meet the other eligibility requirements.
We also have a question that says, I applied in the IDES system in March. I'm an independent contractor, and so they have a claimant number, and they received a KeyBank debit card and a UI finding that's stating no benefits. So the question is, do I need to take any action, or will my application move into the PUA pool when that system opens? So they have everything set. It sounds like they have a KeyBank debit card. They have a letter, but they have a letter stating no benefits for that period. What action should they take?
So there will be some action required on the part of the individual to go from regular to apply for PUA. What that action is, we've not developed, we've not finalized yet. And so I don't want to get out ahead of that process. Once we have finalized that, we will post that to the website, and I'll already indicated, I'll share that with you guys on what specifically a person should do in that case.
Okay. And we're getting closer. We're at 4 o'clock, Eric, so I want to be respectful of your time. And we're also recording verbally, or we're recording and writing. All the questions are coming in, but do you have a few minutes, for maybe 5 minutes, for some additional questions?
Sure. Just
Okay.
let me go ahead and yeah.
Maybe we can take 2 more, and then if we can follow up with you, again, we know you're busy, but if we can follow up with you in writing with a few, that would be good too.
Sure.
There's a lot of questions about residual work or residual income. I was wondering if, first of all, you could just define that for people who are going to have to be going into the system.
Residual. Yeah.
Residual. Yeah. But yeah, Eric, if you could kind of define that, and one of the questions that has gotten a lot of likes is about residuals earned from past television work. Does residual income count toward qualifying wages when applying for UI? And how do we list those wages on our application? Additionally, how do we list residual income when certifying?
Okay, so that's a 2-part question. So I think it might be easier if I use the example that is included in our published rules. And I think that that kind of sums it up how we look at that. So during the week ending March 2nd, 1991, gives you an indication of how long ago this was written, right? And an individual performs in a commercial. This commercial is scheduled to air on television every Friday from March 8th, 1991 until May 24th, 1991. As compensation for his performance, the individual will receive residual payments every time that commercial is aired. These residual payments constitute payment for personal services for the week ending March 2nd only. If this individual claims unemployment insurance benefits for that week, the payments shall be deducted from benefits for that week alone. For any week after, where that individual did not perform those services, that would not be disqualifying and would not need to be reported when they're certifying. However, if it's paid during what we call the base period, then it will be used to calculate. It may be used, yes, to calculate earnings for that base period, because the base period uses wages when they were. Let's stick it. I'm gonna stop myself before I get myself in trouble on this one. Can we send it to me, and I'll research that one and get you a written response on that second part.
Just two final ones. One of the questions that's come up, what we've heard too, is what kind of paperwork will independent contractors need to provide, both when they apply and afterwards if they get PUA, when they get certified. So that's just as people try to prepare and be ready when the system goes online, what type of records do they need to consider or have ready?
Sure. So the most common will be the 1040, whichever version you use, from the most recent ended tax year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. And so we can use other types of documentation, certain types of check stubs or anything that is verifiable. Nothing handwritten, nothing, just kind of typed up and submitted to us, but any official document, but the most common is going to be, probably the one that will cause the least headache for the individual, is going to be a 1040 that can be verified that it was submitted to the IRS. Okay, but that's not to say we don't accept any other documentation. There are plenty of other documentation types, and I'm sure that information will be included on any future FAQ.
And you mentioned a guidance document earlier. Is that available to the public, or is that something that we can look at or provide?
Guidance document?
Yeah, I think the example that you provided was from a guidance document. Is that something we should check out as anyone who's interested in unemployment?
Well, it's a public record document. You can actually access that document on our website. If you search law handbook, it's pretty hefty. And that the law handbook includes, and forgive me if that sounded, I didn't mean for that to sound, I'm sure you could have, anyway, it's available on our website. If you type in law handbook, it includes the UI Act, our administrative rules, and our digest of adjudication precedents.
And then one final question. I know that you guys are getting inundated with applications, and so there's been wait times on the phone when people have questions. What would you say or recommend people do in that case?
The only recommendation we really can make is to try often. If you get through, we do have a couple features that we just recently instituted, which is I can't think of the official name, but the live chat feature on our website that you can sort of put in certain questions, general questions, and it will, give you some generalized answers. We're still kind of, don't hang your hat on that, completely. It's a new feature and still working out some kinks there, but certainly I would say try back often to our Claimant Services Center. Again, we've added staff and we're looking at adding even more as we speak, and extended hours. I do know there are a lot of people trying to get through, but we also have a lot of people that do get through, and I can't speak to what the exact volume is now, but a lot of people are able to still get through and get their answers.
Eric, really quick before you go, there's a lot of nuance to these questions, and it's nuance where each individual person has a specific situation, but it still applies to other people. What would you recommend for people when they have these questions and they're just trying to figure out which area to apply, and they're coming on calls or webinars like this to try and get answers, they're researching online, like what should they do, in their, in an emergency situation? Like, can you help recommend something?
Well, the first thing I would suggest everyone on the call, and tell a friend, and tell them to tell a friend is don't take advice from your friends. Everyone's situation is different. Okay. Just because you both worked at the theater company together doesn't mean that you worked, you have the exact same work history for the last 18 months. So my advice is always get information directly from the source. If you can't actually talk to someone in our Claimant Services Center, our website has a wealth of information. Navigating it can be a little tricky. We're working on improving some areas of that, but certainly try to get as much information directly from us as possible, and be patient with us. If all else fails and you think you should be eligible for regular UI, go ahead and file a claim. We're in the business of taking claims, and we will let you know your eligibility at that point. Don't assume. Again, don't take advice from your friends. And then if you're not eligible, we'll advise you of that, and at some point be able to advise on what the next step with the PUA will be.
And also, I mean, we've also heard too of, people purposely giving bad information. I mean, there are scams out there with respect to the CARES Act, including, other provisions of the CARES Act, like PPP loans and stuff like that. So, make sure you're talking with a trusted bank. And as you said, Eric, the most trusted information is right from the source, from the IDES itself.
Absolutely. Even I got a text last week that there was a problem with my unemployment claim. And if I wanted to, maintain my eligibility under the CARES, click this link. And it created anxiety in me. And I have never filed a claim for unemployment. I almost like, what is this? And so, yeah, just be careful where you're getting your information from. IDES will never, we're not emailing you and requesting information and click this link and doing anything like that. We will generally have you contact us directly or sometimes we will contact you by phone for eligibility issues, but we certainly identify ourselves and explain the purpose of the call. If you have any questions about whether or not you're actually being contacted by one of our representatives, express that to the individual, hang up, and then you can try to reach back out to our Claimant Services Center to verify that information. Or for that matter, have the individual to give you their contact information for you to be able to verify.
Well, Eric, I want to thank you for being on the phone and on the webinar with us and taking some very detailed questions. We could probably, in fact, not probably, I'm sure we could keep you here for the rest of the day. We're, flooded with questions, and we will try to group those questions into ones that we can send to you for more information. And we greatly appreciate the work that you're doing, and we appreciate you taking the time today to address some of these questions.
Sure, no, not a problem. I understand how difficult and challenging this must be and how scary it must be for a lot of folks, but we just know that we're working as hard as we can to, get these systems in place and get people paid and, trying to support each other in all of this. So yeah, it's not a problem at all. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Eric. And I want to thank people for coming on the call, coming on the webinar today and asking your questions. Again, we apologize that we weren't able to get all of them, but we hope that through the questions that we were able to get answered, you're able to gain some valuable information. This is a very difficult time, and for our sector in particular. And we want to, as an alliance, both provide you with as many connections to resources as we can. And to that end, don't forget that if you're self-employed, you might qualify for a PPP loan or an EIDL loan. We do have an FAQ on our Facebook page, and we can provide that to you. That provides more information on what you need to do to qualify for a PPP loan, how that works, what is a PPP loan. And there are also provisions in the CARES Act for family leave and for paid sick leave as well. Those are benefits that nonprofits can actually get federal funding for through a payroll tax credit to provide that to you. So you can check out our past webinars, right, Demi, on the, is there another way they can get to it besides the Facebook group, or is that the main way?
For what, the FAQs?
FAQs, yeah.
I'll send a link out to everyone who registered for the webinar tomorrow to both the small business FAQ and the basic unemployment FAQ that we just developed. Like I said at the beginning, based on this webinar, based on the answers we get from Eric, we're going to keep adding to that unemployment FAQ to try and address as many specific questions as possible. Hopefully we can have a version of that next week. Yeah, next week or the week after, just depends. Hopefully just to get it to you before the system starts the week of May 11th.
And thanks again, Eric. Well, as soon as that system's up, we'll spread the news quickly and as far as we can. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for everyone who's on the webinar. Hang in there during this very difficult time. Chris, thank you for moderating, and Demi too. So we wish everyone the best. We'll be back next week with an additional webinar. We want to provide these resources to you on a weekly basis. So thank you, everyone.